Sit right down and I'll show you where my dreams began.
I'm Michael Dugan, your culinary host, guiding you through the chef's journey. Join me at the chef's table, where you'll experience stories, secret sauces, signature dishes, and kitchen disasters. Welcome to part 1 of Adventures with La Spiga. Today, we will meet Pietro Borghesi, passionate Italian and general manager and the co-owner of La Spiga. He partnered with his wife Sabrina Tinsley, executive chef and co-owner. Together, they have brought the flavors and culture of Italy to Seattle, Washington. And today, on part 1, you will learn about Pietro, how he came to meet Sabrina, and what led them to choosing the path to own this cultural icon in Seattle, Washington. Ciao, Pietro.
Ciao, Michael.
Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Pietro, tell us what it was like growing up in the Congo.
Well, I mean, it was very interesting. Those were times where Mobutu started the fight against the Belgians. And my father was a doctor down there, so he kind of lived it through. But my mom would just go back and forth because it was at times very dangerous. So I ended up staying there only for 2 years or so. I hardly remember, besides all the stuff that my father brought home after. After this, my mom gave him the ultimatum: you got to come back because with 5 children, I can't do this anymore. And so I have very, very vague memories of that. A lot of pictures, but I was the only sibling in my family that was born down there. It did leave, kind of an interesting aspect to my personality because I've always considered myself a traveler because of that. And just a tone of internationality to my family. Let's put it that way. But then, I did the regular life of an Italian boy in the 70s, and 80s. And it really shaped me. I was, I think, very lucky, besides the fact that my father died when I was 9 years old. He got sick down there. So
I'm sorry.
Well, it's part of life, right? And but we were lucky because Italy was an economic boom, right after the war. Yeah, but I grew up, basically, I lived, besides that, I lived a regular life, of an Italian person. I grew up in a part of Italy that's called Romagna, part of the Emilia-Romagna region. The capital is Bologna, but the Romagna region is the eastern side of the region on the Adriatic. And a very calm and a pretty rich place. So I was able to, attend school. I went through high school. I did a couple of years of economics at the University of Parma. And then I had to stop because my mom couldn't support me anymore. So I picked up a job. At the beginning, the intention was to work and study, but the job it was too demanding. So I was working like 60 hours a week. It was really difficult. But it gave me the start on the food business because I was working for a company that was a food distribution company, pretty much like cash and carry here. So they had, I would say like a market of clients that were from the grocery stores to restaurants to hotels. My area is there's a lot of tourism, so there was a wealth of customers, of clients to be tended to. So I started off as a sales rep first, and I was in charge of about 50, 60 grocery stores that were buying almost entirely from us. So I would supply. It was almost like a franchise, section. And I had a passion for the classics of the region. So I would spend time sometimes with my bosses to go and buy wheels of Parmigiano, decide the prices for like 100, 200 prosciutti at a time, and I learned how to choose them, how to check for quality.
So tell us, how do you check for quality for Parmesan?
Now everything is automated, right? So
okay.
they have these robots that go. There are these aisles,
but I want to live the fantasy. Our listeners want to live the fantasy of, visiting and checking the Parmesan and learning about the foods. And
well, the Parmigiano, to check it is that there are special hammers that you kind of look. You are looking for sounds, because a Parmigiano that doesn't work is because it creates some bubbles of airs inside, and that's what we call in Italian fallato. When a Parmigiano is not whole inside, then it loses in value, basically.
I see.
Yeah, but the quality of the Parmigiano, once there's a consortium, right? So the quality, once it's branded as Parmigiano Reggiano or Grana Padano, the quality check has been done already. So what you want to make sure that you don't get, some when you buy it, you don't get some that develop these bubbles inside, basically.
Okay.
And but the funny story there is that at one time, because it started working there 30 years ago, basically. So the robotic section of a house of Parmigiano, it's called caseificio, was not existent yet. Now they have these machines that go grab the automizer. They grab a wheel of Parmigiano off of the shelf, then they turn it around because it needs to be turned around so that it doesn't develop these bubbles. And back then there were these really stocky old men that would just pick it up. It's a 30 kilos, cheese.
Okay.
Usually it's very oily outside, so it's slippery. And you should see these guys who had arms that looked like legs, and they were just flipping this cheese and patting. It was pretty interesting.
That's the fantasy I'm thinking about.
Yeah, it's beautiful. But also seeing the production, even there, like every caseificio, every house of Parmigiano has one person and only one that decides when you stop the cagliata. Basically, you have this, the milk comes in, they put them in these vats, and little by little they started warming it up. They put the caglio inside, and then it start creating these how do you say curds? How do you call that? Curds, right? It curds a little bit, right? But it's the temperature that decides when you stop the cagliata and you pull out. There are usually 2 wheels of Parmigiano every vat, and there's only one person that decides when you can stop that, and it's the casaro, and that he does it with no instrument, just with the palm of his hand. He's got his hand.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the casaro works 365 days a year because he's the only one that will do that. Pretty incredible. And then I would do the same for the prosciutto. Prosciutto, in fact, we are, I don't know if you knew that, but we've been voted last year as the Council of Prosciutto di Parma. So the consortium of the Prosciutto di Parma gave us that title for last year because we have in Seattle, I don't know how many use that, but very few restaurants use the prosciutto with the bone in.
Oh, okay.
So we buy the bone-in prosciutto, and then I debone it. Actually, it's me.
Oh, you debone it.
I debone it, and then I tie it up, and then we cut it. The reason why a lot of my colleagues tell me, so why would you go through all that when you can already buy it deboned?
Right.
But the reason is that the prosciutto, until it has the bone in, it keeps aging. It keeps curing. So
okay.
So that right now we are using a 3-year-old prosciutto. It develops some flavors that are you won't find in an already deboned prosciutto because they debone it by machine in the prosciuttifici, and then the vacuum package. Otherwise, it would go bad. And but then the aging stops. Sometimes they say, "Oh, this is a 24 months," but the reality is that it's 24 months old. If it was 24 months when they took the bone out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we talk about moving forward in your life, was there a point where you came across a decision and you knew that you wanted to choose the path or the fork in the road to own a restaurant?
I have to blame my wife. Absolutely. That was the fork. Yeah.
She would be smiling right now.
Well, she knows. We've been married 7 years, so we had time to talk about this. But yeah, we met in Salzburg. My wife and I, in Salzburg, Austria. She's American, and she was teaching in an international school in Salzburg. And it was basically love at first sight, and we went back and forth, like a long distance dating for about a year, and then she moved down to Italy. But I think what really sparked everything was because she is a natural chef. She's a Creole from part of the family is from Louisiana. They're all natural cooks. It's amazing.
Okay.
The moment that we started hanging out together in Italy, at the beginning, she couldn't work legally. So if I had to go somewhere, I was traveling all over Italy for work. And so I would tell her, why don't you come with me? I have to go to Naples tomorrow. Come with me. And then we go eat somewhere there. So you experience that food. And she just fell in love with the quality of the ingredients in Italy, with the culture of cooking. And
oh, yeah.
And from that moment, she made me fat, because then she would experiment at home all the dishes and trying all these ingredients. And she started after that. She started taking some classes. She would cook with my mom too. And before we knew, we started opening some shops already in Italy. So we had some frozen yogurt shop, because I was working for a period of time for a company in Italy that was a company that produces all ingredients for pastry shops, for bakeries, for ice cream shops.
Oh, wow.
And even there, I was in charge of a franchise. Basically, we would give our potential investors, a turn of the key business with all the products. And the frozen yogurt had just started in Italy, and it was very successful. But also we had a couple of places where we were making piadina. Some piadina shops. Piadina is our flatbread that we typical from my region.
Okay.
And piadina shops all across my region are incredibly successful. So we made the flatbread itself and then make it into sandwiches, and even that was very successful. And Sabrina started blooming for cooking.
I can imagine. Just this conversation is making me so hungry.
Oh, she did. At one point, we had this shop in Macerata, was nelle Marche, the Marche region. And we had this small shop right in the middle of the university buildings where all the classes, it was full of students. There were about 16,000 students all living around us, right? So we were super busy. And she started coming up with these sandwiches using fresh ingredients. We would always cook at home and bring it to the shop and fill these incredible sandwiches. And it was very successful.
We're going to explore more with La Spiga in part 2. But I want to make sure that our listeners know right now, how do people find you if they're a tourist or if they're a local? How would they get to your restaurant?
We are on 12th Avenue and Pike, so pretty famous, especially after last summer, place. And we are in a historical building that is called Piston and Ring.
And your website?
My website is www.laspiga.com.
Pietro, I just want to thank you on behalf of Voice for Chefs for being our guest today.
It's a pleasure.
And do you have any parting words for us in Italian?
Volevo ringraziare I nostri clienti e te per il sostegno che ci avete mostrato negli ultimi 22 anni della mia vita.
Wow. And what does that mean?
That I wanted to thank, besides you, all the customers that showed their support in the past 22 years of our life.
Part 2, we'll learn how Pietro wooed his wife Sabrina and moved from Italy all the way to Seattle. And together with his wife Sabrina, co-owner and executive chef, they started La Spiga in Capitol Hill, a famous Italian restaurant and cultural icon. Thanks for joining us today. Follow us on Facebook. Find our website in the show notes. Subscribe on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen. Leave a comment with 5 stars and stay tuned for the next episode of Voice for Chefs.